I am excited for this episode. Book author edition, Macaulay Michael Minton. He's an entrepreneur and book author. He is my co-author for our recently published book titled Would Kentucky Voters Approve a Ban on Assault Weapons? It's actually an analysis on Kentucky voters and their ban on assault weapons. This book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Ingram. Let's congratulate Macaulay on his first published academic book, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. It was a pleasure to be able to put this book together with you and kind of comb through the research because what we did was beautiful, in my opinion. We took a very nonpartisan approach on just trying to take the temperature on what the Kentucky electorate feels about gun control. As you know, I'm a gun owner. I mean, if you can see it in the background, there's a gun cabinet right behind me. I'm a sportsman. I believe in Second Amendment rights, but at a certain point, we have to draw the lines on what's acceptable and what's not, and just see what that's can shape into. And I think that our research really highlights what is available in a really red conservative state, and be able to show what the rest of the country can be able to move forward on. Because when we talk about things like gun control, we're not exactly diving into sportsman rights. Like we're talking, like we took the temperature on assault rifles, and we took it from a lens of nonpartisanship. And I think that that is something that's impactful in the research and what the community needs, because there was no bias in this.
Absolutely. And like a recent colleague of mine stated, because we were in school and we did this book actually as a project, we are technically a political scientist, and it is our job to do an analysis of this magnitude.
Well, I mean, one beautiful conversation that you and me had, and I'll never forget this. We were talking about what it takes to be an elected official or a political scientist, even at that point. And you told me I learned that there's no requirements for it. And one thing that I told you was the reason that we go to George Washington University and we study political management is because we want to do it right.
Yeah.
We don't want to like be set up in this paradigm of failure that has come before us. I think that what we're doing is shaking a political establishment, because I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want to be a career politician. It's not my vision to be in DC or in Frankfurt for the rest of my life. I really hate to go in and do that, honestly, because I know what's going to happen to me. There's going to be personal attacks, mudslinging, maybe tarnishment of my business. But at a certain point in life, I had a call to duty, and you have to rise to the occasion, because the sheep behind you will not. And it takes
Mhm.
you to be a leader. And it takes one person with one vision and one thought process to say, and I am going to do this, and I am going to defend this, and I am going to fight for this. And that's kind of how I've gotten my advocacy campaign going on, and things to do. And I'm not really a super liberal person. I'm not a super conservative person. And what we did with this book was we took a nonpartisan temperature on what people see out there in the environment. And as an elected official, I believe that that's what you're supposed to do. It's not supposed to be the Mitch McConnell agenda. It's not supposed to be this agenda, that agenda. You're supposed to be a representative of your people. And I feel like there is so many elected officials that are into corporate interests, lobbying interests, and they really get into office and power, and they go into a status quo mentality. They have the political financing that will pay for that because that's big business. And even on a entrepreneurial mindset, like from where I come from, like I'm a small guy. I'm not corporate America. Like my little bourbon company that I have, Dark Arts Whiskey House, is like David and Goliath. Like we don't have billions of dollars to fight and do marketing. What we do is what we put forward is what we believe in, what we think that should be right, and what we want to express into the populace, and want to see what the public feeds back on that.
Wonderful. And it's really interesting. I mean, you have such a thorough thought on politics. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience and your interest in politics?
Oh wow, that's a rabbit hole there. I mean, when I was
Well, a summary.
yeah, I mean, when I was a young man, I served as the United States page for Senator Mitch McConnell. I was being groomed to be the next Republican congressman from Western Kentucky. I started doing LSD and expanded my mind a little bit and was studying civil liberties and constitutional laws. And I really woke up one day and I decided like I didn't believe in anything that I stood for. And like I literally resigned from all these campaigns, positions, and notoriety positions, and it put me in a consciousness crisis personally. But I really just redefined myself on what I believed in and what I believe for humanity as well too, because my perspective isn't just like Kentucky. It's not like my city in Lexington. I believe in things that need to move on a progression from local community, and we have to think about planetary as well too, because you can see every construct of things that are happening in the geopolitical sphere right now, and things are locally based, but you have to look at the greater impact. What the decisions that I make as a businessman here in Lexington
Mhm,
impact people around the world. It impacts people in the state of Kentucky, the United States, and anyone else in my sphere.
mhm.
And it's just that rubber ball effect. Like when you throw a ball down, it bounces, and it keeps bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. But you have to see what that impact is and judge what your internal constitution is when you decide to take a position and move forward with it.
What led to the research and exploration of Kentucky voters' attitudes toward banning assault weapons? And I'm going to answer this real quick before you do. As someone from New Jersey, um, I've been interested in this topic for quite some time, and I've had this topic on Linda Love Talks podcast on where I invited the FBI expert um, on to the show, and she talks about how she wants to address mass shootings and how mass shootings has been linked to assault weapons. Um, and then I was looking on a topic, looking for a partner and a topic that would be of interest to me. And suddenly, Macaulay needed a partner to write this project for school, and it became an ideal match for me. Macaulay?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about gun positions in Kentucky. I said I'm a sportsman. I personally carry a gun with me, but when I bought this pistol right here, it took me a shorter amount of time to buy this pistol at the gun store than I can buy a latte from Starbucks. And I think that what the pulse that our book and our research comes upon is sensible gun control policies. I'm not saying that we need to strip everyone's gun rights, because I mean there's cabinet guns behind me. I have one in my pocket most of the time, and I believe in the Second Amendment. I'm not one of those people that we need to burn guns or to confiscate everything. But when you start getting into assault rifles, that's a whole different category. I can't just go and buy a grenade launcher or a grenade or anything like that. But let's have some sensible approaches to it. If you're going to have an interest in that, I actually I shoot assault rifles with sport with some of my friends. I personally don't own those rifles, but I've done that. And if they own those in a sensible way, I support that though. But one of the things that we address in the book was red flag laws.
Yes.
So for people that don't understand, red flag laws are, it's kind of a background check policy. It just makes sure that you're not going in and having a deep like mental issue or malicious intent, and there's a waiting period that goes behind it. So in Kentucky does not have red flag laws, and that is one thing that I firmly believe in that needs to happen. I don't want to restrict people's gun rights, honestly. I'm pretty pro Second Amendment, but you have to like go through it and like write the threshold at a certain point and decide what's right and wrong. Like my guns behind me are all shotguns and rifles that I use for hunting. My pistol that I carry with me is for personal self-defense. But I'm not walking around with an AR-15 assault rifle
Right.
and multi-military concepts in my
Hmm.
weaponry. Like I don't just pop the trunk of my Audi and pull out a machine gun or
Right.
anything like that. And I think that that is where we as Americans have to, and Kentuckians have to
Hmm.
draw a line on it and establish ourselves for what we want our future to be. And because there was a massive shooting right as we were doing this paper in Kentucky,
Hmm.
and the guy literally went into a gun store, like I just said when I bought my pistol, went in and out, no problem. And then he went and shot up the entire bank. He killed the governor's friend. He killed a lot of innocent Americans and innocent people that did not deserve that.
Hmm.
And I just firmly believe if you're gonna own a weapon, that there needs to be a security cleaner on it. Like the interesting thing is like me owning a whiskey company,
Hmm.
I am so regulated from the federal government,
Yes, absolutely.
the state of Kentucky,
Hmm.
and everything. Like I could go buy and resell machine guns easily than I could sell my whiskey on the open market.
Right.
And I think that's where we get into the flaws and the down pits of it, and it's just really about coming into and doing a common sense approach on this. Like I'm not advocating like let's burn all the guns, take everyone's Second Amendment rights away from them. And I really think that's what we were able to encompass in this book was the raw data, and it was
Yeah.
nonpartisan because it's not like two liberal extremists decided to like come up with some more research. Like I'll have guns till I die, and I think that that's something that people need not need to have, but if you choose to have them, that you need to have a sustainable and sensible approach to ownership on it, and that's it. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't own a motorcycle and not have a license for that.
Right.
I can't have my SUV and do that without it, but I can go down to the fairgrounds, buy an AK-47, take it to the gunsmith, and then have him refabricate it, and then it goes into a full assault weapon mold right there.
Let's take a step back because I talk about this in our book that we co-wrote. Let's talk about American history and society and how it's contributed to the prominence of firearms and gun ownership. Um, if I can take the lead on this question for a second,
Please.
um, it has to do with our American history. At the beginning of the inception of America, America was a bit of a lawless land. So it was getting settled and it was a bit lawless. They didn't have police officers in every single town. Some places were less populated, so you even if you called a police officer, you wouldn't get one anyway, or they would be 2 hours from the police station or even 3 hours from the police station. And in some parts of the United States, it still is like that. It is that rural that they don't have the efficiency or the speed of a police officer that you would have in a city area. So it was about that. It was used for protection. It was used for hunting, and hunting wasn't exactly in the when the America first started, hunting wasn't exactly a sport. It was a necessity. So times have changed since then. And in addition, guns were seen as a societal status, which I think a lot of people still hold on to. And many times I believe, I don't know if it's true in Kentucky, Macaulay, maybe you can help me out with this. In some states, sometimes your guns can be handed down from generation to generation.
They can be, and I don't see any reason to be able to take that away. But my because when you talk about that, in this cabinet right behind me, I have my great grandfather's 22 rifle, which is a short barrel, single shot that he used to like hunt for rabbits for his
Mhm.
family. But what I do not have is a Kalashnikov in that cabinet from my great grandfather. And that it's an interesting perspective on the inheritance of a gun as well too,
Mhm.
because that's usually clear and cut. But most of the weapons and guns that we're speaking upon are not these assault rifles. Like my great grandfather did not have an AK, not even an AK-47, but he didn't have a Bush machine gun with night vision and a fast reload clip in it. So we're not even talking about the same thing in that perspective on that. In
Correct.
my opinion, like that's just from my grassroots
Mhm.
experience on that. What we're talking about is modern military weapons. And modern military weapons, I don't care who you are. There's no reason to for that to be in the citizenship hands. And even if you decide that you want one of those weapons for your personal use, there needs to be a registry for it. And that is what our research kind of showed was there needs to be some regulation. We're not talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment rights. We're not talking about taking away people's guns. But why do you want that?
Mhm.
Why do
Mhm.
you need that? What's your perspective on it? And I just feel that there is a disconnect across the United States and in Kentucky on that subject matter right there. Because this is one of the most polarizing issues that we see in Kentucky. I mean, we're in a red state, like I was saying earlier, which is okay. I gun rights man myself. That's the interesting thing about this book is I am a gun rights advocate. I support the Second Amendment, but it just can't have these broad approaches to it. You have to draw the line in the sand at a certain point and define the parameters on it.
Let's talk about Kentucky for a minute, because not everyone in the continental United States will be familiar. Let's talk about Kentucky's gun laws and how they compare to other states. What challenges and opportunities are associated with advocating for systematic change in the Kentucky area?
Well, Kentucky is a open carry constitutional state, which means that I can literally put this pistol right here on my hip and I can walk around anywhere in the state except for federal buildings and things like that. But my point is we're not talking about that. We're talking about assault rifles. We're talking about military weapons that should not be available to a mass consumer spectrum. There is no reason for someone to own a fully automated gun. And I know that those are illegal, but I have a gunsmith 2, 3 blocks away from here that can rig my gun up and be able to produce that like bullet and magazine capacity out there. And that's just where I think that we have to come up with these common sense solutions and just draw a line in the sand. Like,
Mac Mackley, what are the potential pathways forward?
I mean, uh, red flag laws are one of the number one things that I feel passionate about. Kentucky does not have red flag laws, and we kind of spoke on that earlier. It's just doing a background and just a background check on people to make sure they're criminally and mentally fit to own guns. And that's something that we do not have in the state of the Commonwealth of Kentucky right now.
Mackley, will there be more political books in the future?
For me,
Yeah.
oh, until I die.
So my answer to that, will I write more political books in the future? I would probably say probably, yes. And my perspective, and I think you'll hear my voice coming through in the book, is when I address laws. And I'm very much into laws and politics, and how they go hand in hand, and how they intermingle, and how you need laws in order to progress politics.
I mean, if you would have asked me a year, 2 years ago, if I would have written a book on gun control, probably would have laughed in your face.
Right.
But what we did was we did good survey data. We took the temperature on what the citizenship of the state is in a heavily red Second Amendment rights, blah, blah, blah state, and was able to cut through that because I feel like so much of this gets jaded in conversation because like you start talking about Second Amendment rights and gun rights, and it's like, oh, you're gonna take my guns away from me. And it's just like, well, like, no one's trying to take your guns away from you. And I think that's what that book approaches. It's just trying to figure out the construct of what reality should be. Like, where should we be as a society in 2024 at this point? Like, like, what is the measurement of acceptance and non-acceptance? Like, I, I, I feel that that is something that is going to be defining what we put down as a society and moving forward because gun violence is not going away.
Right.
I'm not saying that this book is going to fix gun violence, but we're missing out on the simple safety steps of it. And if you're a gun owner and if you're a person who advocates for assault rifles,
Okay, so I think you left off on the potential pathways forward.
I mean, honestly, it's just systematic approaches for common sense. It's being able to appreciate gun rights and the negative effects that we have in this country from gun rights as well too. I mean, that's a mouthful right there for anyone, honestly. And like, how do you weigh that out? And it's just becoming more idealized on how we put safeguards in for things. And I'm not a gun control advocate though. Like I'm not. Like I'm not wanting to burn everyone's guns, but like we have to have safeguards in sight. And honestly, red flag laws are need to happen. That
Ultimate, ultimately, though, we didn't choose the ending of the book at all. We just clearly stated what our polling and what our survey indicated what Kentucky voters wanted um, with regards to guns, correct?
Yeah. And I believe that that is the opinions that I've been expressing tonight as well too. It, data doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Like people want sensible gun control. We're not trying to steal your guns. We're not trying to take your pistols, your shotguns and rifles, but there just needs to be a safety net.
So Macaulay, who should pick up our book and who is our target audience? What do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, I think political scientists in the state of Kentucky should definitely take a read at this. And I think that anyone else in the country that is in a more broad wing span of this issue of gun control. But I mean, like what we found can be applied on a national spectrum as well too. I mean, I don't think that what we found is extremist information. It is just sensible. Like we're not saying like this book didn't say get rid of assault rifles. It just said let's put some of these procedures in place. Like let's put some of these red flag laws into place. Let's keep a registry of this. I don't think that we in any shape or form said that we were anti-gun, wouldn't take anyone's guns away, and the data that we came up with was remarkable in the fact that it alluded to that. I mean,
Absolutely.
all these conclusions that I'm speaking on right now
Mhm.
are from the data. It's not from me. I'm not over here like on a pedestal
Mhm.
talking about these issues. This is what we saw as sensible gun reform.
Absolutely. And I think my takeaway from this whole experience as a book author, as a researcher, as a political scientist was that I think it is so imperative and important for governors and government to really take a step back as to what they think is the best approach and to actually ask the people they represent what they want. Because ultimately, our representatives, our government do work for, hopefully the greater good and for the people. And I think it's always about the greater good and not an individual's personal agenda.
Well, the research shows one thing, and my opinions are another thing.
Yeah.
But there are so many people that take hardline positions
Mhm.
because they expect lobbying money and outside money in their political campaigns to defend themselves. And honestly, I think it's a catch 22 and a conundrum
Yeah.
because why would the gun association not want to try to put protections in place for them? Why would they not want to have certain things like this so they can promote their agenda, whatever that might be? Like why can't we have these simple steps in place?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, this is the last question that I ask all of my guest speakers on Linda Love Talks. What is your message for the audience today? Besides to buy our book, of course.
My message is fuck the corporate world and to think for yourself. Don't don't just take messaging from any construct. You need to dissect that and come up with your own opinions and see how that fits into your life, your family, and your community, and realize what the broader spectrum is on that. Because what we do here in Kentucky and New Jersey has a planetary effect. And that is what a lot of people don't realize. What we do here affects the entire planet that we live on. And I think that that is something that people do not conceptualize a lot. Like, and it is what it is, honestly.
Absolutely. And I think my message for the audience today is to continuously read and know if where you're getting the information is a good source of information, and to inform yourself. And if you've heard it or read about it 3 times over or so, then probably there's some truth to it, because that's what I've been taught. So I want to thank you so much for your time, Macaulay, and I want to thank the audience for listening. And remember, you can find both me and Macaulay on LinkedIn, and I will share any of the websites Macaulay would like to share with me. So you'll find that in the postings below. Thank you. Till next time.
Thank you, Linda.